All right, continuing our discussion on rate of change and slope. So this time we will be finding the slope of a line and it's just given points, okay? So if that is the case, unlike with the previous examples wherein you have the graph of the line, you just need to find two distinct points and then identify how do you get from one point to the other. Do you move up or down? Do you move left or right? That's how you can easily identify slopes from a graphed line. But if you are instead given specific points and no graphs at all, you can use the slope formula. And how does it look like? Since we know that slope is simply rise over run, then the formula is going to be the difference between the y values of the points divided by the difference between the x values of the points, okay? So it is important that the x coordinate or the y coordinate that you use first in your denominator must belong to the same ordered pair as the y coordinate that you used first in the denominator. So when you have two identified points, typically what I do, so I don't get confused, the first point that was mentioned, that's point number 1, and then point number 2 is the second one. So I just get the x and y values from whichever point and plug them into our formula, okay? So let's have this example. So what is the slope of a line that passes through -1, 0 and 3, -2? So as I have mentioned, what I typically do is I label this as point number 1, okay, and this is our point number 2. So remember, for the formula of slope, and by the way, the symbol that we use for slope is the small letter m, okay? So if ever you see me write m equals, I'm pertaining to the slope, okay? So remember, it's going to be y2 minus y1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So remember, the y2 and the x2 should come from point number 2. So if we replace those values, y of the second point is -2 minus, okay, what is the y of the first point? It's 0, okay, all over x2, which is 3, minus our x1, which is -1. Now remember, this is a minus sign, so you have a -1 as your x sub 1, so you just put a parenthesis on it so you don't get confused, okay? So working on this, you have -2 minus 0, it's just gonna be -2, okay? When you have 3 minus -1, remember that when you are subtracting integers, okay, it is important that you change the sign and then add them, okay? So this will become addition. Oops, sorry, my bad. So this will become addition, and this -1 will now become a +1. So you will actually be adding 3 and +1, which is going to be +4, okay? And so now that you have -2 over 4, always simplify your slope. M is going to be -1/2. That is your slope, all right? So just follow the formula and you should not be lost on that one, all right? So why don't you try this next example? So find the slope of the point of the line that passes through 1, 3, and 4, -1. Go ahead. Okay, so the slope of the line that passes through 1, 3, and 4, -1 will eventually be -4, 3. So just plugging in the values of your y and your x into the formula, you will end up having a -1 minus 3. And if you are working with integers, subtraction, you change the sign and then you add. So you will have -1 plus -3, which is going to be -4. Your x values, on the other hand, will be a 4 minus 1, which is just 3. And so your slope is going to be -4 over 3. Okay. So moving on to the next part. Let's have... I'm sorry, it's stuck. Okay, there it goes. It worked now, finally. So in this case, as you can see, we have two special lines. We have our horizontal line and our vertical line. And given that we have the graphs here of our lines, we have to identify the slope, okay? So remember, slope is rise over run. And if we take a look, so from this point on the left, we have to go to this point on the right. Do we have to go up or down? Neither. Okay, so we did not go up, we did not go down, so our rise is basically a 0. Okay, our run on the other hand would be 1 2 3 4 5. We went positive 5 because we went 5 to the right. And what is 0 over 5? It is simply 0. Okay, so when you have your horizontal line, you can see that there is no change vertically, and so the rise has a value of 0. Now let's take a look at our vertical line. So we have rise over run again. Okay, our rise is we went 1 2 3, positive 3, 3 up. And our run, unfortunately, we didn't go left or right, and so that is a 0 run. Now, what do you know about a number divided by 0? You always have to remember that is not okay, all right? Whenever you divide a number by 0, the answer is undefined. Okay, and these two answers here simply gives us a summary of what the slopes are with horizontal line and vertical lines. Horizontal lines, they have 0 slope. Okay, there is no vertical change. In the case of vertical lines, they do have vertical change, but there is no movement left to right, and so the slope is undefined. Okay, so this is actually the summary of all the kinds of slopes that you can have. There's always just 4 possible ways of how you can get a value of the slope. You can possibly have a positive slope, and what can you expect? Your line is slanting from left going to right. Okay, so that is when you have a positive slope. If your negative slope, it is going downward from left to right. You see it's higher on the left and then lower on the right. So just remember those two. And then of course we have mentioned this already from the previous slide. 0 is the slope for horizontal lines, and then vertical lines, they have undefined slopes. Okay, so to summarize, you can use ratios to show relationship between changing quantities, just like the vertical and the horizontal change. Thank you.